So I'll get started. Hi everyone. Thank you all so much for coming, and thank you for coming as well today. This is YouthServe NYC's 11th speaker. And as I always say, just to remind everyone, YouthServe NYC is a service initiative founded and run by young people who want to become more involved in the work of rebuilding New York City in the wake of the COVID-19 crisis. YouthServe NYC is a way to engage peers in service and in social justice. So today we are so happy and fortunate to welcome Daniele Baierlein, who is the co-executive director of the Mayor's Fund to Advance New York City. Ever since it was founded over 20 years ago, the Mayor's Fund has worked with a variety of partners to improve the lives of New Yorkers. So thank you again so much for joining us today. We are so excited and fortunate to hear about your work at the Mayor's Fund and anything else that you'd like to share. And again, just to remind everyone that later when we do questions, you can just type them in the Q&A function or the chat, whichever you prefer. But thank you again, and over to you.
Thanks so much, Eleanor, and thank you for inviting me to speak. I'm really excited to speak to you all, and also just really impressed by the work that you've done as youth in New York City over the past year, putting this organization together in the wake of the pandemic to give you guys access to more opportunities is so commendable. So congratulations to you and everyone in Youth NYC. So I thought I would tell you a little bit about the Mayor's Fund, but thought it'd be helpful kind of to give a perspective of my background and how I kind of got involved. And, I was your age a long time ago, but I've really been involved in volunteerism and service throughout my life. I think it's something that my parents have always instilled in me, whether it was volunteering. I had to do a certain amount of hours for a church project, or whether in high school with student council or National Honor Society, we would do volunteer projects, everything from collecting food for food pantries to volunteering in a nursing home. Some of those times where you do like the manicures for the ladies in the nursing home, or writing cards to folks, things like that. So I always have had a volunteerism service angle to me. And when I was in 10th grade, a sophomore in high school, I attended a program called HOBY, Hugh O'Brien Youth Leadership, which is a program developed about 60 years ago. And it's a 3-day seminar where you learn leadership skills and how to be a leader. And one of the pillars of that is service. And so with that, I started really working on volunteering. So after high school, I went to college in New Hampshire, and I had the opportunity to volunteer on Al Gore's political campaign for president. And from there, I kind of got a political bug and worked in Missouri and in Maine and other states volunteering, which led me to Washington, D.C. And for a long time, I worked with Democratic members of Congress, raising money for their campaigns. And then I was a lobbyist and did government affairs and public affairs at a firm. And so what I did was I worked with members of Congress to talk about different issues that my clients cared about. So sometimes it was healthcare issues, sometimes it was technology, like Google was one of my clients. My favorite client was the National Confectioners Association, which is the candy companies. And after every meeting, we left, we always gave them a little bag of sweets. So, you always left on a positive sweet note in every meeting. And then, that all that led me back to New York, where I worked at Madison Square Garden for a little while, and then came to the Mayor's Fund. And what really drove me to the Mayor's Fund, I'd worked for politicians, I'd worked for corporations, but I had never had the opportunity to actually serve the people of the place where I was living. And really, that's what I love so much about the Mayor's Fund. As Eleanor said, we're about a 26-year-old nonprofit. We are associated with the city of New York. So that means we work alongside them, but we are a separate nonprofit. Nonprofits, as you might know, are considered 501c3, that's the tax status, but we're not a city government, but we work alongside city government. And what we do is we develop public-private partnerships with city agencies, with community-based organizations, and with private funders. So whether it's one of our 3 large issue areas that include youth workforce, mental health, and immigrant New Yorkers, or whether it's times during COVID or a crisis where we launch relief efforts to do things like, for this example, during our COVID period, we helped raise money and serve meals to healthcare workers when the cafeterias and hospitals were shut down and there was no restaurants that were open and they didn't have access to food. We took in for the city PPE donations, which are the protective, like the masks and things like that. In the beginning, when we couldn't buy them and people were donating everything from a couple of surgical masks to large quantities from big companies as well. So we helped coordinate that effort. We also worked with our small business restaurants, developing a program called Restaurant Revitalization, where we were able to give the restaurants funds to bring back employees and pay them a minimum wage, and then also make meals to serve out to their communities. We also help the city. Some of you guys might be familiar with SYEP, which stands for the Summer Youth Employment Program, which the city offers to young people. Usually there's about 70,000 young people that have the opportunity to get jobs through the city. And last year, because of budget cuts, we weren't able to do it. So we helped raise money to get 35,000 jobs that last summer. And this year the city's actually doing 70,000. So the opening has happened last week. So you guys should go online to look at that if you're looking for summer jobs this summer. They're not with the city, they're with companies and stuff like that, but the city is the one that coordinates it all. So what I really like about the Mayor's Fund, as I said, is really working to really see what the needs are for different parts of New York City, and then working with city agencies and private dollars to help create programs to meet those needs. I can keep talking about the Mayor's Fund, there's lots too, but I figured I'd give the abridged version.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. It's a great overview. So I think now we can start transitioning into questions. And I have a few to start, but if people have questions, you can just type them in the Q&A or the chat. So you've talked about, and your website mentions how you work with city agencies as well as nonprofits, mayoral offices, etc. So how do you generally choose which places to work with?
Sure. So what happens is, there's over 50 city agencies and mayoral offices. Oftentimes they'll come to us with a need that needs to be met or a program that they would like support in raising dollars for. And so whether it's them coming to us or we try to look at the issue areas that that are most are part of our mission. So things like youth workforce, mental health, immigrant reform, or we sometimes create programs on our own. The Food for Heroes program, which I mentioned before, when we were bringing meals to the hospital workers, we developed that on our own because we were talking to New York City Health and Hospitals, which is a public hospital system in New York City. And right in the beginning, and they said, what do you got? How can we help you? Like, what are you needing? And they said, we need to feed our staff. Like they're working 2 shifts at a time, and so we developed that program. We are going to be launching some new programs in the spring now, what we call recovery programs. So while we're still in the pandemic, we're trying to now recover from the pandemic as well, on an economic front, on a healthcare front, on a learning front for young people. You guys know better than anyone. A lot of you perhaps were not in school last year, and some of you might be doing partial school learning now. And for young people, sometimes that's hard, it's challenging. So we're trying to bridge that learning gap and develop programs that can help young people so that when you go to school in September, it'll be a lot easier.
Thank you. Okay, so similar to that question, I think you've touched on this as well. But how do you decide which innovative programs that you support to actually work with? Because obviously there's so many. So which ones do you, and how is the process?
We talk about it internally. Like, so we have a senior team. I'm the co-executive director. There's 2 of us. I manage our programs and development, and he manages operations and communications. So I always say I raise the money and he spends it. And then we have a programs and policy director and an operations director. So we meet as a group. we look at the, we talk about the program when we work, when an agency comes to us. It's not just here's this program, can you guys help us? It's in-depth process where they give us a program document, they give us a budget. We think about who we could go after for money. Like if it's easier to fundraise for a program, we're more likely, it's going to be easier to do it. We think about how many people it would affect. If it's a pilot program, is it something that the city would consider after it's proven bringing into the city? And we say bring it to scale, which means the city would bring it under the city budget and make it larger. We also look at, if it's, like I said, an area that's a priority for us. And we look at who we would be partnering with. So we partner with the city and then a nonprofit or a community-based organization to do the work. So those proposals and, the reputations of the organizations and the clients they serve, the areas they serve. I think one other thing that's present now is the city has worked with the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene to determine 33 communities within New York City that have been hardest hit by COVID. Most of those communities are, minority communities due to the higher rates of COVID in those populations. And so everything that we are doing now has an eye to those 33 communities, and whatever we do, we want that to affect those 33 communities in a positive way.
Great, thank you. Okay,
Yeah.
so the next one, I realize you've also talked about this, but how generally has COVID changed the work you do? And then kind of building on that, can you just generally talk a little bit more about the rebuilding work that you've been doing and how you choose and prioritize needs?
Yeah. So I think as far as changing, we all, I'm sure you guys remember this, like everyone does, I think, that day of March 13th last year, Friday the 13th. We, on the senior team last year, decided that that day was going to be a test run for us, for our staff, to work from home. And then, just do a test run. But that Sunday night, the mayor declared a state of emergency. And so we all just started working from home that Monday and have been ever since. And I think, well, that's not necessarily like answer your, I have more, but that was a big impact, and it was a big impact for all New Yorkers and Americans and, folks around the world. And, it's still quite challenging for us. I mean, we've been able to do our job seamlessly, but, it's hard. We're a very close staff. We don't see each other in person. We haven't, most of us, since last March. So that, I think, is the most dramatic change as far as our staff and our team goes. Our work, we, annually do about 50 different programs, and a lot of the programs that we were doing were put on pause, not because we didn't want to do them, but for a variety of reasons. There was a program that we were working with Warby Parker, the eyeglass company. You guys may have know their stores around the city, and the Department of Education, where we were going to be doing eye exams for kindergartners and first graders. And then those who needed glasses would get glasses donated. We're about to launch, and then COVID hit. So the schools are closed down. And even this year, when some schools are back, it's not safe, for the young people to be getting those eye exams with people right now. So that's got put off. So a lot of programs like that got put off. But we were able to develop new programs because of it. We also worked, back in June when there were a lot of vandalism that was done because of some of the rioting. We worked with several donors and launched a program where I think we raised 1.5 million, I want to say, to help small businesses get grants so that they could fix their businesses. So we're able to shift. And the nice thing about us compared to the city is our flexibility, where we can do stuff like that and quickly. One thing I learned when I came here is that working with the city, the contracting process, which is something that you probably don't think about, I know I didn't, is very long. But when you work with the nonprofit side, it could be more nimble and can move quicker.
Great, thank you. So I have another, and then I'll look towards the Q&A or the chat.
Okay.
So you've talked a bit about how you focus on promoting mental health services for all New Yorkers, increasing workforce development opportunities for younger New Yorkers, and meeting the needs of New York City's diverse community of immigrants.
Yep.
So can you just talk a little bit about your work with each of these issues? I know you've touched on it a little bit, but just more.
Yeah, I would love to. Let's start with the mental health programs. The First Lady of New York City, who's the mayor's wife, that's her biggest issue area that she cares about. And, back when they first came into office, and she launched something called Thrive NYC, which is a roadmap to helping city get everyone in the city get more access to mental health services. She started something called 1-888 NYC Well, which is a hotline that it's free for anyone in New York City to call. And it provides you with mental health people that you could talk to about your challenges that you're having. It helps you make appointments with a psychologist or a psychiatrist. So that's a program. One of the ones that the Mayor's Fund has supported is something called Thrive in Your Workplace. So for folks that in their offices, we work with different companies and nonprofits to help them develop a mental health plan for their employees. So like whether it's surveying the employees to see what their needs are, connecting them with services, whether it's webinars, we've done a lot of webinars. And so the Mayor's Fund works with the Office of Thrive and with private funders to raise the dollars to do the programming work. For youth and for youth workforce, we launched the Center for Youth Employment. And what they do is they connect the Department of Education, the Department of Youth and Community Development, and businesses to make sure that young people have career opportunities throughout, middle school, high school, whether it's exploration, whether it's internships, whether it's mentorships, and making sure that things are coordinated so it's not everyone's talking to each other. One of the programs that we work with is Ladders for Leaders, which is an internship summer opportunity for companies across 7 different areas, 7 different industries within the city. So like fashion, technology, business, making sure that young people all have an equal playing field to get those experiences. So it's not just someone that, oh, my dad works here and, my friend got a job there. Really making sure that all young people have those opportunities. One of the programs that we did during COVID for immigrant New Yorkers is providing them with cash assistance. We worked with the Open Society Foundation, which is a very large foundation, and they donated $20 million to the Mayor's Fund to provide New Yorkers with assistance, folks that are undocumented or are not able to receive unemployment benefits or the stimulus checks that are going out right now because they're undocumented, but a lot of them lost their jobs. And so we were able to provide families and individuals with assistance during the time. And that was, I think, probably our largest program during COVID or ever actually in this administration.
Great, thank you. Okay, so I might combine some of them
Yeah.
in that, but
Look at them, or are you going to look at them and read them to me?
I'll read them out. But because there's a political race going on right now, there will be a new mayor next January. So what does that mean for the Mayor's Fund? Like, what does a change in mayor mean for you all?
Might not be there, but the Mayor's Fund will still be there. So the Mayor's Fund was started under Mayor Giuliani, and it's always ongoing no matter who the current mayor is. Some of our staff will probably still be there because there is multi-year contracts that happen. So, programs go on multi-years. There's, when I say contracts, funding contracts or program contracts that go on. Myself and my colleague, JL, who's the other co-executive director, we're considered appointees of the mayor. So what will happen is most likely, the new mayor will come in. It's not going to be the first priority. Probably what will happen is there's deputy mayors and commissioners. Those are the first people that they'll put in place. And then a couple months later will be the Mayor's Fund staff. But that won't happen until, so there's a primary in June. And you should actually do one of these on, well, I don't know if anyone here can vote, but it's called ranked choice voting. It's the new style of voting that's going to be happening this year, and it's challenging. So it's a good thing to learn about. So maybe have someone come on here and speak about that. But so the primary is in June, and then the general is in November, and then the mayor gets sworn in on January 1st, 2022.
Great, thank you. Okay, so another one is, where do the funds that you raise come from? How much is from public funding and how much is from foundations or other nonprofit organizations?
So we have three main buckets of funding. The first is foundations, and I would say that's our largest. So people might have heard of Robin Hood. They're a New York-based foundation. The Ford Foundation is a big one. Open Society, which I mentioned before. New York Community Trust, folks like that. Then the second is from philanthropic individuals. We have a board of about 50 civic and business leaders throughout New York City. They range from folks in technology and real estate and fashion and just general business. They give us some money, but also other individuals that have a lot of money. So whether it's through their family, that they have money or however they make it. And our third is corporate donations. So companies, like, I'm trying to think of who we recently got money from. Someone from Nordstrom's is on our board of advisors, and we get donations from them. They just have the two new stores in Columbus Circle. We get money from banks. We get money from, healthcare companies. We get money from real estate. So like that. We do have a small contract with New York City to do the work that we're doing. And so we do get some public dollars, but that's not where our majority of dollars come from. And all of our fundraising, about 95% of it is directly for a program we're supporting. So it's not one general pot of money and then we distribute it. It's for a specific program. We do have a small account that raises dollars for our operations. So like for salaries and our computers and stuff like that.
Thank you. Okay, next one is, how are you working with communities to get access to vaccines, particularly in the 33 communities that you referenced earlier that have been very heavily impacted by COVID-19?
So Mayor's Fund is not really doing a lot on the vaccine. That's more of a city effort. There is another, there are other city affiliated nonprofits. One of them is called the Fund for Public Schools. Another one is called the Fund for Public Health. So they are working directly with the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene to do that. A lot of education. There's a lot now of nonprofits that are getting access to make appointments for people. Language translation, something called a credible messenger, which means a trusted messenger. You might trust your friend more than you trust like the banker down the street, or things like that, or someone from your church or your temple than you would someone that you just met. So Mayor's Fund is not, our role is not that, but the city is doing a lot on that. Great. And if you want more information, I can get for you.
Thank you so much. Do you ever do work outside of New York City? So many people who work in New York City don't actually live here. And also, do you ever work with other cities? And are there like similar Mayor Fund programs in other cities?
Yeah, so there are Mayor's Fund type programs in other cities. Boston, LA, Oakland, San Francisco, down in Florida. I actually joined a Zoom a couple weeks ago with mayor's funds from all over, and I believe it was Fort Collins, Colorado, that initiated this little group of folks, and it's really interesting to hear the work they're doing. We don't typically do programmatic work with other cities, but we do talk to them to get their thoughts, bounce ideas off each other. During the beginning of the pandemic, actually, we talked to a couple of folks about what they were going to be doing as far as launching relief efforts, and that was really helpful. New York City, if you work for city government, you have to live in New York City. The Mayor's Fund, since we're not associated, you don't have to live in New York City, but most of us do. I think there's another question in there, but I don't know if I answered all of them or not.
No, that's great. I'll just do another one. Okay, so someone said, I imagine that several of the programs that you support, you could have anticipated, such as providing food for hospital workers, but perhaps there's some programs that you never would have anticipated until COVID turned the world upside down.
Yeah.
Which programs that you support were most unexpected to you?
I actually think the one for food for hospitals wasn't something because, what in our mission, the Mayor's Fund always says we support vulnerable New Yorkers. And, for in general, you wouldn't consider, when you consider vulnerable, you either because lack of income, lack of access to something, a disability, something like that. And you wouldn't consider, doctors and nurses vulnerable. But that shifted during COVID because they didn't have access to those kind of things. So that was actually one of the programs that we would never have thought about that really needed support. Um, I think cash assistance is something that's always been, especially the last few years, been talked about a lot. But the need for it, I think, is so much larger than we thought. There was a need before COVID, and now the need is even greater. You might guys want to look at, there's a couple different cities right now that are doing pilot programs for cash assistance where they're giving, you have to live in a certain zip code, and then you apply and anyone can apply to get it, and they're applying, I think it's for $500 a month. There was a pilot that was done, I believe it was in, I want to say Oakland, California, another city outside of San Francisco recently, and it proved tremendous benefits for the people. It actually increased people in getting jobs because they had access to the dollars that they needed to like get a babysitter or things like that. It increased people's mental health. There were so many positives to the study. So I think cash assistance is something that, while we know is important, is something that it's like we weren't prepared.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I think we have time for one more. So, what is your advice to young people like us who want to get more involved in more public service work? And in your opinion, what are the best ways to do this? And just what general advice do you have to people who are very committed to the city and to helping vulnerable New Yorkers?
I think that even in times like this, finding ways to volunteer, whether it's virtual or if you're comfortable in person. I still try to find time. Back in January on MLK Day of service, I volunteered with Food Bank NYC, and they had a program where you wrote letters to, they were going to be put in the bags of food that were going out to people. So that was like a great way to volunteer. So whether it's looking, New York Cares, I believe, has a really great website that provides opportunities. Talking to your school, maybe you guys can get a group, or encourage your teachers that you're interested in helping them, asking them to help find volunteer opportunities to you. A lot of times through a religious group, they have a lot of things on the site. But I think just getting involved, looking at see what you like. I mean, I didn't know what I wanted to do when I was in college until I volunteered on a campaign. But really trying to look out there and see all the different opportunities that you have, and don't get discouraged. I think this year has been so hard, and I know for myself too. Even like when we were doing that Food for Heroes program, I'm a hands-on person. Like I like to be there, like see what's going on, making sure. And I couldn't be there because of health purposes, and it was frustrating for me, but like I knew that we were still going to be able to do this work, and really trying to find outlets now. And then once things open up and you have those opportunities to actually go to the soup kitchen, or go to the shelter or go to the hospital to like thank the healthcare workers. But just keep at it. Sometimes there's I'm trying to remember the names of like the groups that were when I was younger, in the high schools, like student council sometimes organizes thing, and you know what. And the other thing is, if no one's organizing it, you should, because better to take the initiative. It's great for your mental health, for your college applications, things like that. Also,
Well, I think that's all the time we have for today, but thank you so much for everyone who came, and thank you for joining us as well. again, this was recorded, so I will be sending that around. But yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eleanor. I hope this was helpful to folks. And if you or any of your classmates are looking to talk to someone else in the city, let us know. I'm happy to connect you. And keep up the great work. And I hope that you all have a healthy rest of the year and an enjoyable summer.
Thank you.
And I think they're opening up. I think I saw today that New York next week is going to be opening up vaccines to young people 16 and over. So yay.
Yeah.
Have a good one. Thank you so much.
You too.
Bye, everyone.